Welcome to Moon Mind. In this video, we're going to explore a very specific kind of pain. The kind that appears when someone doesn't choose you. You probably know it well. The quiet replaying of conversations. The endless questions. The moments where your mind circles back again and again, trying to understand what went wrong. And beneath all of that, there's a deeper ache. A question that doesn't always have words, but is always felt. Why wasn't I enough? But here's something most people never realize. When someone doesn't choose you, and you remain there, waiting, hoping, trying to earn what should be given freely. At some point, the suffering stops coming from them. And it starts coming from you. Not because you're weak. Not because something is wrong with you. But because you're caught in a pattern the Buddha described thousands of years ago. He didn't call it love. He called it attachment. Attachment is subtle. It doesn't announce itself clearly. It feels like care. It feels like loyalty. It feels like devotion. But underneath, it's something else. It's the force that keeps you reaching for something that is no longer there. It turns affection into dependency. It makes you bargain with reality instead of seeing it clearly. And here's the compassionate truth. No one taught you how to see the difference. No one showed you where love ends, and clinging begins. So what you're experiencing isn't failure. It's something deeply human. Something almost everyone goes through, until they begin to see more clearly. Tonight, we're going to walk through a series of teachings and stories, reflections that act like mirrors. Not harsh lessons, but gentle ways of seeing. Ways that reveal what attachment really is, where it comes from, and how it begins to loosen its grip. If you feel comfortable, share where you're listening from. And let's begin. When someone doesn't choose you, your mind starts searching. Almost instantly. You go back to the last conversation. You analyze every message. You question your words, your tone, your timing. Did I say too much? Was I not enough? Should I have done something differently? The questions multiply. And beneath all of them, there is one deeper wound. What's wrong with me? This isn't just overthinking. This is the mind trying to make sense of pain. But here's what makes it exhausting. You're not only feeling the loss of that person. You're also carrying the story your mind is building around it. There's an ancient story that speaks directly to this. A monk once became deeply attached, not to a romantic partner, but to his teacher. He admired everything about him. His presence. His calm. The way he carried himself. Over time, his focus shifted. Instead of practicing, he began watching. Waiting. Wanting to be close. His peace became tied to proximity. Then one day, things changed. Access became limited. Distance appeared. And slowly, the monk began to suffer. Not from anything physical, but from longing. His body weakened. His mind became restless. Nothing seemed to ease the ache. When his teacher finally came to see him, the monk must have felt relief. At last, what he needed had returned. But what the teacher said was unexpected. He gently pointed out that the monk's suffering was not caused by absence, but by dependence. He had mistaken presence for peace. This is where the teaching becomes clear. Pain is natural. When someone leaves, when they don't choose you, it hurts. That part is human. But suffering grows when you add something extra. Insistence. You begin to think. They should have chosen me. This shouldn't have happened. I can't be okay unless this changes. And each should creates tension. Because reality is moving one way. And your mind is pulling in another. This tension is what creates suffering. Not just the loss itself, but the refusal to accept what has already happened. You might believe your pain is entirely about them. Their absence. Their decision. And yes, that plays a part. But the deeper suffering, the kind that keeps you awake at night, comes from what your mind is doing with that absence. It turns a person into a requirement. A condition for your peace. It says, I can't be okay unless they choose me. And once that belief takes hold, you're no longer just feeling pain. You're trapped in it. But here's another truth the Buddha pointed to. Everything changes. People change. Feelings shift. Circumstances evolve. Nothing stays fixed. When you build your sense of peace on something that is always changing, you create instability. Not because you did something wrong, but because you're relying on something that cannot stay the same. Someone not choosing you is not always a reflection of your worth. Sometimes it reflects timing, capacity, where they are in their own life. But the mind rarely sees it that way. It turns their decision into a story about you. And that story becomes heavier than the reality itself. There's another story that reveals something deeper. A man believed he was in love. He thought his happiness depended entirely on one person. But when something more appealing appeared, his focus shifted instantly. His love moved. Without hesitation. That's when he realized something important. What he felt wasn't stable. It wasn't rooted in understanding. It was driven by craving. Craving doesn't stay still. It moves from one thing to another. Always searching. Always saying, I'll be okay when I get this. And even when it gets what it wants, it doesn't stop. It just finds something else. This is the difference between love and attachment. Love allows. It appreciates. It doesn't demand. Attachment insists. It says, I need you to be this way, so I can feel okay. And when reality doesn't match that demand, suffering appears. When someone doesn't choose you, attachment speaks in subtle ways. I need them to see my value. I need them to come back. I need this to work. But notice the pattern. I need. That's the voice of craving. And craving turns your peace into a transaction. I'll be okay, if this happens. But life doesn't work that way. Real peace begins when that condition loosens. When you realize you can care, without clinging. You can feel, without collapsing. You can experience loss, without losing yourself. There's also something else happening beneath all of this. A kind of inner burning. You feel it in your chest. In your thoughts. In the constant pull towards someone who isn't moving toward you. This burning comes from three forces. The first is wanting. The second is resisting what is. And the third is misunderstanding. You believe your effort can change their choice. You believe their validation will complete something inside you. You believe you cannot be okay without them. But these beliefs are not truth. They are interpretations. And when you begin to see them clearly, they lose their power. You don't have to force yourself to stop caring. You don't have to shut down your feelings. You don't have to pretend it doesn't hurt. You only need to see what's actually happening. To notice the grasping. The resisting. The stories. Because what you see clearly, you are no longer controlled by. And slowly. Very slowly. Something begins to change. The grip softens. The mind quiets. The need to chase fades. Not because the world changed, but because your relationship to it did. And in that shift, you discover something unexpected. You were never incomplete.